So virtual assistants for me is a big part of generative AI. It's a big part of operational efficiency as well when you think about the financial services industry. Our app online users is up 16% from last year, and that's as the end of July, which is great for us. We need standardization. And when I say standardization, I'm talking about standardization of requirements across different jurisdictions. You need interoperable systems. So you need the systems to be able to speak to each other.
Hello and welcome to ITWeb TV with me, Sibahle Malinga. Today we're unpacking the evolution of the payments landscape in South Africa and Africa as a whole. We know that South Africa has traditionally relied strongly on cash as a preferred payment method, with many still opting to pay with cash. Hence, cash is still king. Despite this, there has been quite a significant transformation in the payment landscape over the past few years amid the rise in digital and alternative payment methods. You know, the payments landscape in South Africa and on the continent, and in fact the world over, is going through quite a period of rapid change. We're seeing traditional cash-based economies growing, increasingly open to alternative ways to shop, alternative ways to pay, alternative ways to transact. So much is unfolding in the fintech and banking space. And today we are going to be, talking a lot about some of the trends that are dominating the banking and fintech space. We are going to also be taking a look at what Nedbank's digital transformation strategy is looking like in the space. Today I'm joined in studio by Chipo Mushwana, who is the Executive of Emerging Innovation and Payments at Nedbank. Chipo, thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and I'm really excited to be here with you today.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you. So I did mention that, the fintech space on the continent there's a lot evolving. There's a lot of excitement happening. Mm-hmm. A lot is unfolding. And of course, this talks to what banks are offering us. It speaks to a lot of mergers and acquisitions of traditional banks, buying into or partnering with fintech companies. So we are really going to be talking a lot. I know you've written a few opinion pieces around that space. But first, Chipo, just provide an overview of your professional background and the journey that led you to your current position at Nedbank.
So I've had a very interesting journey that led me to financial services and technology, which is actually known as Fintech. I didn't study anything that has to do with financial services. I actually studied psychology. I wanted to be a psychologist by trade. But when I had to specialize in my master's, I then decided I wanted to do something that was business related. So I branched out and I went into the marketing field. And that's where my career really took off.
And never looked back to psychology?
Never looked back at all. I think I'm better off for where I am right now. I'm in an exciting position where I get to work with financial services, where I'm at the cusp of all the interesting innovations that are happening globally. And I really do enjoy payments. I never get bored. I've been doing it now for almost 16 years.
Wow.
And I absolutely love it.
There is never a dull moment in this industry.
Never.
Is there?
Never.
Sounds a lot like journalism.
I'm sure. I
have seen you, though, making waves on LinkedIn and social media. A lot has been said. You've been very vocal about what's happening in the industry. You've educated many of us. But maybe let's just talk a bit about what your role at Nedbank entails and why you find the payments space so exciting.
So my role in a nutshell, effectively, is to future-proof the business. So I have to think about what are those technologies, both existing and new, that we can bring into the business that will support growth objectives of the enterprise, but also serve the populations that we want to serve. If it's the South African citizen or it's a South African business, how do we effectively do that? So it's future-proofing the business with technology. I find this place extremely exciting for me because you get to be at the cusp of what's happening. You get to support the socioeconomic agenda of the country, because payments effectively are the heart and source of how value is exchanged, not just between individuals, but also between businesses. And that is the heartbeat of every economy. You are the backbone of job creation. You are the backbone of goods moving, of distribution industries, of supply chain, etc. So for me, it's such a privilege to be part of payments, and I really, really do enjoy it.
Wow, it's such an important point you mentioned there, supporting the economic agenda of the country.
Yeah.
And of course, we cannot speak about, the emerging trends around digital economy without the payments landscape. We're seeing a lot unfolding in the payments industry, in the Fintech industry, and even in the e-commerce industry. The ecosystem is just intertwined, and the lines are blurring between all these sectors, which were once existed in silos, now all coming together. So can you just give us, in a nutshell, a synopsis of how you would describe the current payment industry in South Africa? What does the landscape look like? And perhaps we can take a few steps back and look at where we come from.
So it's definitely evolving, and I like the point that you mentioned, that there is the blurring of lines, because when you look at all the industrial revolutions and all the different industries that were disrupted, for lack of a better word, financial services was one of the last ones. But in that, what we are seeing is that everybody wants to participate in financial services. You've got telcos, you've got retailers, you've got different industries that traditionally were not involved in financial services now being involved in it. And what that does is it just opens up the pie. And I say when it comes to payments, the bigger the pie, the better for everybody else, right? Because the scale and sustainability of any payment solution lies in the manner in which it's adopted in any community or society. That's where the heart and the strength, it's a mass volume kind of game. And when I think about sort of the industry and where we come from, think about the days, you spoke about cash still being king. We had cards only at some point. We even had checks. I don't know if
Yes, I remember that. I was quite young, but I definitely remember my daddy writing down a few checks.
So we've come a long way from checks to card. And really the evolution of cards becoming more safe and more secure has really just driven a lot of the use cases, if I might call it that have been overlaid on cards. So you spoke about e-commerce. And if you think about where e-commerce was, it was really very nascent in the country, particularly pre-COVID. Right? And then what happened during COVID is a couple of things happened. Contactless payments took off. E-commerce took off as well. But those two have not really matured. I mean, we are seeing about 30% year-on-year growth in transactions from e-commerce alone. And if you think about contactless, probably 70-80% of the transactions are contactless. And that's also because it's driven at an industry level, where all the banks are mandated to ensure that the cards are contactless and drive contactless behavior. So we come from that space, and also where we've had digital wallets, right? And if you think about, you spoke about alternative payment methods, and what that speaks to is effectively the ability for me to send money to you. I'll give you an example, such as PayShap in South Africa, which was recently launched. I can send you money right now using your cell phone number.
So easy.
Right? Or your account number. And it doesn't matter which bank you're with or which bank I am with, but it settles in under 5 seconds. That's our industry SLA. And it costs as little as 10 cents. We've never, ever seen that. And if you think about what that is trying to address from a South African perspective, it's addressing high volume and low value transactions where people want to send 100 Rand, 30 Rand. Before, where we come from, we needed EFT to do that. And EFT has always been very costly. If I wanted to send you 1,000 Rand today using an EFT rail, as we call it, and I wanted you to get it immediately, I had to pay a premium, 40, 50 Rand, depending on how much I was sending. And that was not sustainable in South Africa because, like you said, a lot of people are still using cash. So we've come such a long way from the South African perspective. And then we've got the pays. Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Garmin Pay, etc. And think about, I don't carry my wallet anymore. I withdrew cash last week. I'm struggling to get rid of it because everywhere I go, I'm so used to tapping my watch. I hardly remember.
You tap your watch, you tap your phone.
Yes.
Now there's rings. Now you can tap your smart ring.
Your ring, right? So we've come such a long way, and this digital evolution keeps getting more seamless. It's embedded in our day-to-day life. We don't even think about it. So the cognitive load of doing payments and choosing a payment mechanism is significantly reduced. And I'm excited. And the same is for the African continent. Think about M-Pesa in Kenya or EcoCash in Zimbabwe. That has transformed the lives of millions of people that don't have strong financial services industry like we have in South Africa, but still need the movement of value and money.
And
for
those
businesses.
Are mostly unbanked people who are still able to transact.
Right?
They're still able to send money across borders.
Yes.
And yet they do not even have a bank account.
Yes. And that's what Africa is about, right? So when the world looks at us and they look at the EcoCash or the M-Pesa story, they marvel because what we did is we leapfrogged.
That's leapfrogging, right?
In the US, they still have checks, believe it or not. They still send checks by post. So we're thinking checks.
We don't have much of an option but to come up with these agile solutions.
Exactly, because our economies and our people need them. We don't have the same infrastructure. And we just don't have the same access to either technologies or access to bandwidth, etc. There's so many factors that surround a payment being made from point A to point B.
Very interesting. So you know, speaking of PayShap, I totally relate. Never did I ever think there'd come a time when I actually make an online payment just using my phone number.
Yes.
I don't have to put in my bank details.
Yes.
I know nobody has access to my bank details. The merchant, the startup that I'm paying online will never get to know. Yes. At the very least, they may know what bank I use, but they'll never get to know what my bank details are. And if there's no easier way of making an online transaction than that, then, you know, I can't think of one if there is an easier way. So you speak of the growth in digital payments. You even speak of the growth in e-commerce. Now, that gets me to wonder then, why is it that we are still not at a point where even, a large majority of South Africans are using these digital payments with all the wide variety of options that we have. We've seen growth, especially during COVID, of cashless payments. We've seen, card not present payments. We've seen tap and goes. Why is cash still king in South Africa in 2024?
Wow, I've written quite a few pieces on this, and payments is a double-sided sort of coin if you think about it, right? In the banking world, we'll use the words like issuing and acquiring. But what we have in South Africa is when you drop off a taxi today, and let's say you stay in Mamelodi or Soweto, wherever the case may be, the person you're going to buy the loaf of bread from, the Coke or the eggs for your family, does not necessarily accept digital payments. So it does not matter that you're coming from a job that pays into your bank account. Fact is, when you get into your environment, you're forced to use cash.
And it doesn't matter that you've got your Samsung or Apple Pay on your phone. At some point,
it doesn't matter.
Become useless.
So the entire value chain is not fully digitized, such that it's that seamless from one point to another. So these different environments place different demands on our behaviors as consumers. I say, when I go to Soweto over the weekend, I generally always think, let me always have cash around, because I might get to a place that doesn't accept cards, or I want to buy something on the side of the street, and I cannot because, I want to buy quota, so I have to use cash because Uma doesn't accept digital payments. So it's an unfortunate indictment on the payments industry in South Africa. But what gives me comfort is that you spoke about partnerships, etc. We are seeing a lot of partnerships between banks and non-bank players that are saying we are committed to ensuring that we digitize the entire value chain, because also cash is expensive for any economy.
Yeah.
Handling of cash, banking,
the lack of accountability,
etc. The taxman doesn't see it all, and all those other things that come with that shadow economy, as we might call it, are not necessarily beneficial for the South African economy. So there's all players, retailers, banks, non-banks, fintechs, etc., we're all sort of going into these economies and saying, we are digitizing the full value chain. We are making it easy for merchants or small businesses to accept cash. Think about what Nedbank did with Nedbank Tap and Phone. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we went down that journey was because we said the cost of physical devices is just too much. If I came up to you and I say the physical device at that point was costing anything north of 2,000, 2,500. This was like 4 or 5 years ago, right? And we said, but Soweto can't afford that. There's that fee, and then there's the transaction fee. It just, and the connectivity and all these other things. It's actually a barrier to digital payments. So we decided, okay, we're going to be the first in South Africa to launch SoftPOS, which is convert your phone into a payment acceptance device. So I don't need to buy any additional hardware. And we've been on that journey for years now to say, what are these low-cost payment acceptance mechanisms that we can introduce to support micro and small enterprises, because they need it the most.
And how well is their product doing in terms
It's doing extremely well. And what we are seeing is that it works well in very niche and specialized industries, where either a hairdressing sort of spots, a barber, we're seeing it work in those kind of spaces that are quite niche, not necessarily the big retailers, and it wasn't made for them. I mean, globally, when I saw the technology, it was actually being used in like the Apple store globally, right? Where you buy something on the floor and then you just tap with the attendant inside the store. So it was a queue busting solution in essence. But in the African continent, we don't need it like that. So we take it, we rearrange it, and we use it in the manner that we actually need it.
Well, it's funny you talk about how informal merchants are being digitized. I actually withdrew a sum of money. I actually withdrew a sum of money just the other day as I was going to China City, thinking, well, the last time I went there, I really struggled to pay. But to my surprise, many of those informal merchants now are carrying some kind of small device or another to ensure that you are actually able to pay, cashlessly and seamlessly. And I was just so impressed that, wow, it was only a year or two ago when I really struggled. And the worst thing about a place like China City is you can't even find an ATM.
That's it.
So you have to go back to the car, go to the nearest filling station, withdraw money. And I guess that's the whole point of digitizing is to for convenience and to create seamless ways of paying from anywhere. So let's talk about now the importance of the important role of innovation around payment services for Nedbank. Talk to us about what your payments strategy is premised on.
So the Nedbank payment strategy has really been around leveraging technology. First and foremost, to drive business agenda and business objectives, but also most importantly, to serve the South African customer or the rest of Africa region that we serve. And so when we think about innovation, for us, it's really across 3 horizons, right? You think about, okay, in the existing BAU, where let's say people are using cards, what can we do in that space, a micro innovation to drive the right digital behavior? Are we encouraging people to go on our money app and drive the right behavior, right engagement that we want? And then H2 starts to say, okay, it's a bit of the old and some of the new, and it brings it together from an innovation perspective. And then the last horizon is completely new stuff we haven't seen, stuff we haven't tried, stuff where we've got more questions than answers. So our innovation payment digital strategy is really hinged across those 3 horizons or sort of that we work across to say, okay, where does this fit in? And what you see is that your Horizon 1 and Horizon 2 are very easy to implement, and because the technologies are there, people understand it, etc. And you can unlock something really small, but it has a huge benefit and value. Simple things like, how do we partner with Fintech X and get more cards into the hands of people, because we understand that when people get their SASSA grants, it's really just 2 days and it's a pass-through store value. How do we get them to keep the money in the ecosystem? How do we attach things such as value-added services where the money then stays in the system and people learn to behave the right way when it comes to digital behavior? But that also comes with a lot of education to people. This is how this thing works, this is what this means, and etc., etc. So if you think about our payment strategy, that's been it. We've spent the last couple of years really modernizing our tech stack. Think about, we're now in the cloud, etc., and we've spent billions and billions like any other bank has, but it's really paid off in terms of cost savings. It's paid off in terms of cost to serve. It's paid off in terms of our ability to distribute products and services. It's paid off in how we're able to cross-sell, upsell different products to the same customer without frustrating them and making them speak to different teams, etc., all those things. And for us, the other thing where we've seen this innovation and technology payoff is we've been consistently received NPS score 1, which means we've got the best digital client experience for a banking app.
Is that from a particular research firm? Or?
It happens globally, and Nedbank has topped it in the country consistently.
Oh, amazing. So what is the name of that?
It's an NPS score. Yes, it comes out as an NPS score. It's done by global research firms, and they basically look at all the banks, look at all the banking apps, look at the client journeys, look at how people are engaging, look at feedback from customers in real time, and then the score comes up. And Nedbank has received that, and that speaks to our prowess in our ability to take technology, innovate with it, but remain meaningful and relevant to our customers on a day-to-day basis. Because remember, we don't innovate for the sake of innovating. We innovate because there's a real need.
It has to add value.
It has to add value to the customer. So that's our digital payment strategy. We have always followed all the technologies that are coming up globally. We stay at the cusp of them, and based on what we want to achieve as an organization, we ingest some technologies and some we don't. A lot of people are talking about artificial intelligence or generative AI, and you think about, we say, okay, we probably have got about 50 plus use cases on the go right now for generative AI, from fraud detection to least cost routing to payment capabilities to marketing, etc. And that's just us saying to our customers, we will serve you the best way we know how, using the technology that we have at our fingertips.
And I'm sure sometimes the customer's not even aware that, the service I'm using at the moment, there's AI behind it.
Yes.
And I guess that's the beauty of it, that they don't always have to know.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, being voted amongst the top in the world. What does that then mean for your customers digitizing and, going the digital route? What are the numbers saying? How has your year-on-year growth been across your digital platforms?
Our app online users is up 16% from last year, and that's at the end of July, which is great for us. And again, that speaks to our investment in digital and us driving the right digital behavior. We've also grown our app clients. I mean, I was looking at the numbers this morning. In 2018, we had 559,000 customers online on our banking app only.
Wow.
And now, years later, we have over 3 million. Right, and that's because of the investment that we've done in technology and driving that. We speak about our super app Avo.
Yeah,
right?
we spoke about Avo just
exactly.
before we went on air, and how well it's
just
doing.
Under like 5 or so years in, and you're almost at 2.83 million clients on that. Right, you speak about things like VAS, so people buying airtime, lotto vouchers, etc.
Electricity.
We are enjoying north of 28% year-on-year growth in terms of revenues there. And so for me, this really is incredible. And in fact, on the app alone, the last stats that I saw said that we sell about 90,000 products on our banking app alone every month.
Is this the Money app or Avo app?
Money app.
Wow.
Money app.
Which ones are the top two most popular products?
You've got, insurance, not really, but we're seeing that grow very nicely. VAS is really, really, really growing. And also
things like airtime purchase,
electricity purchase, vouchers, and all those other things. And then we recently did a My Goals refresh where we refreshed our transactional account offering. And that in under a year, we've seen about 2.2 million accounts coming on board. So I'm sure the bulk of that also has to do with our current offering from a transactional banking product perspective.
Ah, that's amazing. And of course, continuing to widen the variety of services and products that you offer does play an important role.
Yes.
When we were discussing Avo, we were just talking about how banks are now becoming retailers and retailers are becoming banks. Because now you can go into a retailer and they have their own money market section where you can do a lot of transacting right there. So let's talk about some of the services that are available on your super app, and where are you now in terms of available categories?
Wow, there's a lot. It's not called a super app for nothing. You can buy a car on Avo. You can buy your solar on Avo. You can buy a kettle on Avo. You can buy groceries on Avo. You can buy takeaways on Avo. Like, it's really a super mall. It's a super giant mall. And really how we add on products. And the really great thing, and I'm going to say this to everybody, November is coming. We know there is Black Friday. Look out for our tech deals.
On Avo.
iPads, laptops, PS5s, all that stuff is going to be coming in at like sweet prices, right? So save your rands and cents and come onto the Avo platform and buy that stuff. So it's really a super mall for all intents and purposes.
So let's talk about, you spoke a lot about the three different elements on which Nedbank's strategy is premised. And one of those was the upcoming technologies, which, you haven't necessarily introduced, but you've observed maybe across the globe that seem to be working well. Perhaps just not yet talking about Nedbank. For you, what are some of those innovations that you think we will be seeing in South Africa in the next few years?
So with generative AI maturing, we're not necessarily going to have new product sets coming into the market. It's not the what, it's going to be the how
things are going to be done. So same technology, maybe just a bit more advanced.
Exactly. So if I think about South Africa, I think about the African continent, we think about remittance, cross-border remittance. That's big. If you think about our e-commerce space, we probably import a lot of our stuff from China. How do you use generative AI to streamline those processes, to digitize that, to protect the buyer and the seller? How do you use other technologies? I mean, we talk a bit about digital currencies and our regulator has got sandboxes for it. But I think there'll be very specific use cases around digital currencies that are going to be mandated, monitored by the Reserve Bank itself, and that are going to be controlled. So it's not going to be what we are seeing as a free-for-all and people doing all sorts of things, because money has to be backed by something, and the value of money is backed effectively by the Reserve Bank, right, of any country. So I think that is going to play some form of role into the future. I think interesting audiences that we're seeing on the African continent is your creator economy. We had a gig economy before, and I think now we're seeing a creator economy. So in the payment space, we're consistently saying to ourselves, how do we service the TikTok who's generating content and wants to sell it? How do we enable payment of that particular user-generated content from their home to the audience in LA or wherever that may be? And that is where payments and some of these things are coming into the mix. So for me, those are key areas, and also cross-border business payments. As this African economy opens up, we're seeing more inter-Africa trade, right? And those are very lucrative business models, but not necessarily have the right products in place at the moment. You've got different jurisdictions that have got different legislations, etc. So I think as governments begin to work together, we're going to see those volumes go up. And I think that's significant for Africa and its development. So it's not in the what, it's going to be in the how all these things are delivered in line with whatever it is we want to achieve.
Speaking of inter-country payments and remittances, there has been a lot of speak about how regulation in so many instances actually hinders the innovation that we would like to see happening in those spaces. For instance, it's easier for me to purchase something from China and have it delivered here than it would be to purchase something from Nigeria, simply because of, the red tape that's around that, or in some instances, just the lack of modernization in terms of the infrastructure that's happening there. What do you think are some of the challenges that we need to really focus, that we need to zoom in on in order to just ensure a seamless payment ecosystem on the continent as a whole?
We need standardization. And when I say standardization, I'm talking about standardization of requirements across different jurisdictions. You need interoperable systems. So you need the systems to be able to speak to each other. We're not necessarily saying governments must change systems, we're just saying the systems must be able to speak to each other. So where settlement needs to happen, money has moved from South Africa to Mozambique. That settlement window, the settlement of those funds needs to be done in a transparent, in an appropriate manner without compromising treasury management and balance sheets, etc. So for me, it's more around standardization of technology, standardization of requirements, and it's also around what we are seeing is when you talk about alternative payment methods, and we are seeing this globally, but in Africa, we are seeing different versions of pay shops, if I might put it like that. So you've got people in West Africa framing their own pay shop. You've got Southern Africa framing its own pay shop. So what you're going to see is first and foremost, it's going to be a regional interoperability, where we say in Southern Africa, our version of pay shop works like this. And we've seen it in Asia, we've seen it in Indian countries, etc. That's how they started, as blocks. And then post that, it becomes a continent sort of offering once you standardize a lot of that stuff. So for me, the challenges are there. I also think that one of the biggest challenges we have on the continent by and large is identity. Think about in South Africa alone.
Is it digital identity?
Digital identity. How many people have got a digital identity? It's not just local South Africans, it's also foreigners, right? And digital identities are a function of a Home Affairs or a Homeland Security department. So once that is up and running, and we've seen it in the Asian countries, where you're able to get that up and running, then digital payments become seamless. Movement of money becomes easy because you know who's on either side of the transaction. You see what hampers banks is know your customer, KYC. So if I don't know my customer and I cannot report back to the sub who you are, why the money got to you, where it got to, I cannot service you. With all the technology that's available, I actually cannot touch you on the basis that I don't know who you are. So some of those things for me are critical and become the backbone or the bedrock through which digital payments are going to grow and thrive on the African continent.
I understand that South Africa is even behind our African counterparts when it comes to digital identity.
Yes, we are, but I'm going to give it to our regulators. There is a project, a digital identity project that's on the go, and it's receiving much attention now, I think, particularly as real-time payments have come to the fore, so your pay shops, etc. And it's a global phenomenon. The need for digital identity has become so much more critical. And also, digital identity is not just for individuals. Small businesses also need a digital identity. They need a digital footprint. So all these things become a ripple effect because the ecosystem has to be balanced enough to support the activities that me and you want to do at an economic and commercial level.
Wow. Fascinating space you work in. I thought journalism was exciting. Like that's something else. And it's so broad.
Yes.
We haven't even begun to to scratch the surface really with the minimal time that we have. But I want us just to talk about AI. You touched on it briefly. Let's talk more about AI and generative AI in payments services and what the future holds for Nedbank in that space.
Great. So like I said, we've got about 50 plus use cases on generative AI at the goal. You're looking at anything from fraud detection, which is big. You're looking at how you service customers, how you speak to customers. So there's a lot of talk in the industry just around hyper-personalization. And hyper-personalization says, what do you want? When do you shop? When do you buy? Where do you buy? And if it's a credit product, we're able to give it to you at the point at which you need it, not just randomly, right? And what used to happen, you'd go to a branch and then you'd come out with a brochure and then you'd go and read it. But at that point at which you need it, and that's really around embedded finance. How do we embed more financial services into your life? And how we do that is using generative AI. I do think that we are at the very early stages of generative AI, even globally. And anybody that's going to build anything even remotely close to like a ChatGPT, you need like tons and tons of billions of data points to be able to get there. But as Nedbank, we've taken all the data that we have, that we've collected, that we have on our customers, and obviously everyone has consented to us storing and keeping this data. But we're taking that data and using it to make intelligent decisions around how we service each customer. It's not just around operational efficiency, it's how we service our customers. How do we make sure that you're well serviced? How do we make sure that you're the right credit product? How do we make sure that the repayment terms suit you? How do we make sure that your kids are serviced from a banking perspective? And that's when generative AI comes to life for me, because it becomes very practical. It's not this big thing that's like a server that's churning tons and tons of data and spitting out stuff that doesn't make any sense. And you have to make sure the right data goes in so the right information goes out. And that's a big part of generative AI, really, and where we are as well. So whether you think about AI-powered virtual assistants, we've got something called NB at Nedbank. I think we service, I need to get the stats, but I think it's like 200,000 or so calls per week. And that's a virtual assistant. It's not a human being. Right, it's really just a chatbot.
Are these audio calls or?
It's a chatbot. You go in and you talk to NB and you tell NB on Money app, hey NB, I need help to find my statements, or hey NB, I need to query this transaction, or hey NB, and it started off initially just as a simple chatbot, but as generative AI becomes much stronger and more mature, it becomes much cleverer. And it's able to answer more complex questions. So virtual assistants for me is a big part of generative AI. It's a big part of operational efficiency as well when you think about the financial services industry, because people are not banking at 8 to 5 when our doors are open.
Absolutely.
People are online doing e-commerce purchases at 11 at night on Shein or Temu or whatever the case may be. And if you've got a problem with your card, who do you speak to? And we've got people that sit at that time. But it's much easier sometimes to just speak to a virtual chatbot or a virtual assistant. If you think about chat commerce, for me, in the generative AI space, essentially giving commands to your phone. It starts with your phone, then it moves to your car, then it moves to your fridge. And you're effectively just giving these voice prompted commands to these tech pieces, and they're able to service you or respond to that voice commands because they're plugged into a much broader ecosystem that services your financial life and your purchases and transactions, etc. So for me, I'm so excited about generative AI. There's a lot of talk about jobs and all those other things that come into place. I just think new jobs are being created. I really think it's an opportunity for all of us to learn new skills. All of us are learning new skills. Nobody can say they are a generative AI expert today. We're all forced to learn on the curve. We're all forced to learn as we go. It's really just such an exciting time for us. But I think for me, what AI has exposed is how human we actually are. You can't digitize us singing a song.
Exactly.
I can't digitize a child being born. I can't digitize. There's certain things you just
cannot
digitize
our emotions.
Exactly.
You know, our expression of love or anger or frustration.
Exactly.
And that's why we will always be more special than this.
This is what I say. I say AI has just amplified how much human we are called now more than ever to be human. And I think it's a beautiful space to be, because a human being needs to drive the AI. It's not going to drive itself. So somebody has to do it. And that for me becomes really, really exciting for us as well.
So just in closing, you make, you emphasize a lot on consolidating tons and tons of data to get to really understand the customer and offer personified products and services. I can just, on the top of, at the back of my mind, I see a lot of those services also coming in on the Avo app, on the Super app, and, you becoming more personalized and really giving consumers what they really want, adding more products, adding even more apps. What do we see happening in that space?
So if I think about just on the Avo app, we're able to analyze spending patterns. And that's a big thing, right? Because if I understand your spending pattern, I can offer you a loan. I can
which you can pay, which you can afford.
You should be able to pay. Obviously, there's the whole credit assessment happens in the background seamlessly and in real time. Things like buy now, pay later, all these other term products that we have at that point of purchase become really important. But also, I'm able to offer you all the other value-added services that are around your activity, let's say, within the Avo app. So today, maybe you're buying something off one of our digital products. Then I'm going to say, okay, can I offer you insurance, digital insurance for your gadget whilst you're at it, right? Oh, yes, you can offer me digital insurance. Okay, can I offer you a care package just in case your device gets damaged? I offer you device insurance. There's so many other things that you can bolster onto that. Why? Because I can see into your financial life, but also I understand how you buy. Therefore, I almost understand your psyche to some extent. You don't want to be too intrusive, but you want to be a guiding force for every customer. And that's what generative AI in the Avo sort of context really comes to life. When we assess, for example, where are people buying what type of vouchers are people buying the most? What type of takeaways are people buying on a Friday? And if you think about the richness of that data and how we're able to give it back to our partners for them to make informed business decisions, that's where the gold comes in, because that partnership needs to work symbiotically for us to benefit from it. We're servicing one customer, but different players in the value chain. And that's what data is forcing us to do, to all come together to say, if our customer is X, you give this, you give that, you give that. And we balance it out in the background using AI.
And voila, we have a happy customer. Well, we are human, so it can't be that simple all the time,
No, it's not, but it's definitely doable and it's much easier.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chipo. It has been quite an exciting, you're a walking textbook.
You think?
No, you definitely have to be one. It's been a very exciting conversation.
I'm happy if it was.
And we look forward to seeing what other innovations you and your Nedbank team come up with. And we are going to be watching the space and being the first to report it, of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that was, of course, Chipo Mushwana, who's the Executive of Emerging Innovation and Payments at Nedbank. Thank you so much for tuning in. It has been a pleasure. Do remember to follow us on X. We are ITWeb, and subscribe. Adios.